We've been looking at self-esteem in young people, but we've also been looking at it across the lifespan. And one of the things that I think is really important to appreciate is why should we care about self-esteem? Self-esteem is getting kind of a bad rap these days from certain psychologists. And we think that it is particularly critical because it's associated with a lot of other outcomes like depression, like suicidal thinking. Certain people have related low self-esteem to other adjustment indices, but in our own work, we've been looking at how is it that low self-esteem is related to hopelessness, to depression, and in some young people to thoughts of suicide. So it's a very important psychological commodity. One of the interesting things about adolescence, unlike young children, is that the period of adolescence marks the necessity to develop multiple selves in different contexts. And so you have a self with your parents, which may be different with your mother and your father. You have a self with your close friends. You have a self with your peers. You have a self in the classroom. You have a self in romantic relationships. And a cardinal principle of development is that things become more differentiated, and we see this with the self. And so here you are now faced with the task of developing multiple selves in different contexts, and that's a very normatively appropriate thing for adolescents to do. That's one of the tasks of adolescence. Once we see that adolescents parse up their world into different relational concepts, we can ask the question, might their self-worth or self-esteem vary in those contexts? Might I like myself better in some contexts rather than others? And the concept of relational self-worth did not come to me from reading theory or a book. It came to me from examining my own life and realizing that there were many domains of my life as an academic, as a romantic partner, as a friend, as a colleague, as a spiritual person, on. And I found myself feeling very badly about my worth as a person in one of those domains, and very good in another domain, and kind of so-so in other domains. And so I began to think, at what point in development might this idea that you can have a different sense of worth in different arenas occur? And given that the multiple selves were developing in different contexts, it seemed that adolescence was a good place to look to see if indeed adolescents felt differently about their worth as a person in different domains. And so we developed some instruments to ask, how much do you like yourself as a person with parents, with teachers, with male classmates, with female classmates, and the list could go on. And basically what we found is that about 3/4 of adolescents feel very differently about their worth as a person in different relational contexts. Some are fairly steady, 25%. Now, why should that be? Well, we looked at this question, and what we found is that the level of approval that you're receiving from people in these different contexts is a direct predictor of your self-esteem. So that if you have parents that are approving of yourself as a person, you will feel good about yourself. If you have male classmates that are not approving of yourself, you will have low self-worth in that domain. It's important to know what's driving these differences, and we know that approval is terribly, terribly important, and that adolescents are very perceptive to how much approval they're receiving in one context compared to another.